Did Nier cheat in Death Note? Matsuda's theory is a popular theory that has remained unsolved to this day. It's actually an inverse theory. It actually consists of two theories that suggest if Nier is a fraud. In today's video, we'll be explaining the specifics behind both theories, followed by figuring out if any of these theories hold weight. Without further ado, let's get into the video, starting off with Theory 1. We get an epilogue chapter that takes place nearly 1 year after the events of Chapter 108, which involved Nier exposing Light as Kira and in turn Light's defeat and death. Matsuda then proceeds to put forth an intriguing theory that suggests Nier was the one to write Mikimi's name into the notebook. This would prevent him from confirming whether or not the notebook he brought to the warehouse was real or fake. He adds to this theory by stating that after Light's death, Mikimi was arrested, supposedly went crazy, and died after 10 days of jail time. Now, I can understand why a lot of people lean towards the first theory as being true. It would somewhat make sense for Mikimi's scrub to not be of his own volition, but rather another power entirely. That being Nier in the Death Note. Mikimi randomly going crazy in prison after 10 days is also quite odd, and at the same time, a lot of people criticize the ending for Death Note and suggest that there's no way someone as cautious and methodical as Mikimi would pull up to the yellow box warehouse without testing the notebook to be sure. However, if Nier were aware of this being a possible scenario, he could control Mikimi's actions with the real notebook to prevent him from ratting to Light or crashing out once he realized he was in possession of a fake. A bit of a side note, but I'm quite surprised that nobody has made fan theories of Nier killing Misa too. It's stated in How to Read 13 that 1 year after Light's death, she commits self-delete. I can't say the word on YouTube. Misa in theory should have banked up a decent amount of years due to Jealous and Rem sacrificing themselves for her. It's possible that Nier may have used the notebook to kill Misa as well. The critique regarding this theory is that Nier is far too noble and wouldn't consider to use such a dangerous thing. But Nier himself even stated that in the most extreme scenario, he could genuinely understand why someone would want to use the notebook, as long as your personal belief remained that you were not a god. There's also the fact that for a brief amount of time, Nier attempted to be like L after he succeeded his position, and this lasted until the end of the See Kira story, in which he realized he needed to be his own person rather than constantly thinking about what L would do. This is significant because Light himself mocked Nier and called him inferior to L, stating that he wouldn't hesitate to test out the notebook due to there being a possibility of it being a fake. He further mocks Nier by saying if he was so obsessed with being noble and righteous, he could have just tested it on one single criminal. He had that chance and he squandered it, which is why he lost, until Light realizes that Mikimi done goofed. But getting back to Misa, it doesn't make sense as to why her natural lifespan would run out so soon, specifically 382 days after Light's death. Even if she made the ideal, Jealous saved her life, therefore all his remaining years passed to Misa. She then used her lifespan to make another ideal with Ryuk, but Rem sacrificed herself for Misa and also got her years. But why would Nier want to kill Misa, you may be asking? Most notably because Misa was a loose end. She was the second Kira, and once she figures out Light dies, it's possible she could snap and in a way uphold Light's legacy, continue on as Kira in her place. Ryuk even told Nier that memories relating to the notebook can disappear and be returned by touching a Death Note again. Even a single piece of paper is enough. It's possible that Nier believed Misa was still in possession of notebook pages, and so he kept her alive in order to monitor her, under the assumption that she would lead him to any remaining pages. Maybe after a year or so, he got tired of waiting and believed the risk was too high, and so he killed Misa as he believed it was a safer option. In that very same year of Matsuda presenting this theory to Ide, Nier contacts Aizawa and requested his help in taking down a drug syndicate. They are having a deal in the Yellow Box warehouse, and for some strange reason, Nier wants the help of the same people who are there to confront Kira. Why did Nier choose that location? Those people, and that very same day, or more precisely 1 year after Light's death, to re-meet. Perhaps he wanted to gauge their loyalty and see if they could be trusted to continue working with them in the future. This would be quite important if Nier was still using the Death Note, because these people were the last ones who knew about its power, about Shinigami, and that the notebooks had been in Nier's possession. Also, why wasn't the supposed burning of the remaining 2 notebooks shown to us? We only see an image through Master's imagination. It's likely that the authors didn't show us in order for us to draw our own conclusion, that being Nier cheated and killed both Mikimi and Misa using the Death Note. It's not out of question for Nier to cheat, as even Obata claimed that Nier was the smartest because he cheated. So with all that being said, does Theory 1 hold weight? Well, honestly, it's debatable. At first, I believe Rule 39 completely debunks this theory because it states humans who have not traded for the eye power of a god of death will see a person's primary life span and will not be influenced by the Death Note. If the victim is killed using the Death Note, the remaining lifetime of that person will be provided to the god of death. However, the translation of this is not concrete. Also, the series has shown that Shinigami Eye users can be manipulated with the notebook. Cal Snyder, the mafia guy with the eyes, was manipulated into sending the hideout address to Misa after his name was written in the notebook. So ultimately, it's really up to you, and it also depends on how you view Nier as a character. I will say that Nier controlling Mikami's actions to guarantee his victory and Nier outright using the notebook to assassinate Light are completely different things. Although, Nier did say that killing Kira would be an insult to L. They already had undeniable evidence to suggest that Mikami was Kira, so if he were to die, it wouldn't be a problem. Nier using Mikami to get a confession out of Light is something that L would do, and it's clear based on the See Kira story that Nier was operating like L in order to uphold his legacy and be as efficient as possible, but after mulling over the past, he had come to realize that he needed to act like his own person. It would also fit with the narrative, as for the longest time Light underestimated Nier and believed he was too soft/inferior to L, but in actuality Nier was built differently and did have the capacity to play dirty to win. Although Theory 1 would explain the inconsistencies behind certain characters' actions, Mikami not checking the notebook beforehand does make sense, even if it sounds strange. Mikami was loyal to a fault and fully trusted Light. Although he did act on his own in the end, it was during a desperate moment in which he believes Light was cooked. Mikami was in a hurry and had no reason to be suspicious of the notebook, as after all, if he trusted in God, he could not lose. Although Nier is a good person, his morality is still debatable. Nier was fully willing to threaten the Mafia by revealing their names to Kira. He was also fine with letting See Kira continue to kill people. Morally, he's not above letting people die or instigating people's death to get what he wants. Nier absolutely despised Light and everything he stood for. I could generally understand Theory 1 because why would he be against killing a serial killer like Mikami? After all, it's what L would have even done. That basically wraps up Theory 1, but there's still one more theory. That being said, Theory 2. Theory 2 suggests that Matsuda believes Nier was aware of Mello and Linda's connection and trade of information. He would have exploited this to force Mello to make a move to reveal where Mikami was hiding the real notebook, thus completely messing up Light's plan. Of course, this would additionally imply that Nier had anticipated the entire endgame and planned for weeks and weeks of events. That being knowing that Light would have Mikami use a fake notebook from the start, that he would have hidden the real notebook in some other place and so on. By indirectly manipulating both Mello and Mikami into crafting his triumph, thus creating the ultimate trap aiming to completely crush Light. If this theory were actually to be confirmed, it would make Nier unironically surpass L in terms of planning, strategy, manipulation, deception, and EQ due to anticipating other people's behavior weeks in advance. The second theory relies on your interpretation, but honestly, this is the theory that we can definitely say is not true. We literally see Nier's reaction to Mello kidnapping Takeda and he's not happy. When he then learns Mello did it as a way to secure Nier the W, he's generally upset and depressed. Nier may be cold, but he genuinely liked Mello, and you could even argue that he cared for him. He respected Mello a lot and actually wanted to work with him, which is why he was so sad that he had to essentially sacrifice himself to solve the case. Why would he deliberately put Mello in harm's way? Even Nier himself admits that until Mello acted, he was unaware of Light's plan and was about to walk into a trap. Nier acknowledged Mello as a rival and even honored him in the epilogue by eating chocolate, which is not something a cold-hearted master manipulator would do. Especially one who basically sacrificed someone who's supposed to be an elder brother figure to him. Once again, this theory stems from Master's confusion and disdain for Light. Even Ide calls him out on it and states that he wishes Light weren't Kira, and based on Master's expression, it's a dead giveaway that completely debunks and shatters the theory. So to wrap this video up, Theory 2 is 99% false, unless the author comes out and says it's canon, which he won't. As for Theory 1, it's honestly a coin toss. It depends on how you view Nier as a character, as well as how far you'd believe he'd be willing to go to put an end to the Kira case. On one hand, it would explain how Nier somehow outsmarted Light, who was one step ahead of him in the end, but on the other hand, it would be a bit odd for Nier to resort to cheating. Although Obata did say that Nier is smarter because he cheats, but I've always seen this statement as more of a joke. Plus, there is a thing called death of the author, which basically means that a text's meaning should not be restricted by an author's intentions or personal biography. Instead, once a work is created, it takes on a life of its own, allowing readers to interpret it based on their own experiences and perspectives. In summary, just because an author says one thing doesn't mean it's the gospel truth. An example of this would be Takao Koyama, the screenwriter for OG Z movies, claiming that Broly is the strongest warrior in all of Z and solos everyone, including Super Vegito, Super Gogeta, and Buhan, even though Koyama himself states that his statement shouldn't be used as the truth, and he's admitted that he's biased. Just a little side note, of course. Anyway, what do you personally think? Do you think Matsuda's theory involving Nier using the notebook on Mikami is true, or did Nier just legitimately win with the help of Mello and his own skills, or did Nier somehow manipulate everyone? and is the solo god of Death Note. Comment down below, and of course, thank you for watching.